Today for our Bible story, we are going to talk a little bit more about Daniel. Now, we talked about Daniel at the end of last week and how his three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, got thrown into the fiery furnace, but God protected them. And today we're going to learn a little bit more about Daniel. Now, the king of the land learned that Daniel was a very, very wise and honest man. He told the truth. He did what he was supposed to do. And so the king gave Daniel important jobs to do because he knew that Daniel would do his best and would help him. Daniel knew that when he did his work, he had to do the best that God wanted him to do. And he also knew that people would be watching what he did, so he wanted to make sure that he did everything well. He also knew that the king would be watching, and that was really, really important. Now, when Daniel did his jobs that the king gave him and he did them well, some of the other leaders started to get jealous because they really, really wanted Daniel's job. But Daniel was the one that had the job. And so they didn't like that. And so they got jealous because they wanted to be more important. And so they decided that they were going to try to get Daniel in trouble. They were going to try to make Daniel make a wrong choice and do something that wasn't right. Now, Daniel grew up in a home where they learned about the one true God and how important it was to obey him. And the king's leaders, now they knew that Daniel worshiped God. And they had seen him. He would go and he would go by the window and he would pray. And they would see him praying. Now, Daniel prayed every morning. He would pray during lunchtime, like at noon, and he would pray in the evening. And he would always ask God to help him, that he would obey and that he would be able to get away from sin and not make those poor choices. And as he was in the window praying, the other people would see him doing that. So they even got more jealous, these men. And so they went to the king and they pretended that they were trying to do a good thing. They pretended, but they really weren't. And they bowed down before the king and they said, "We think that you should make a rule or a law that says that everyone has to pray to you, king, and they can't pray to anyone else. Because, king, you are so great, and we think everybody should have to just pray to you and only you." And so the king thought about it. He thought, that sounds like a good idea. And so they decided that if someone prays to anyone else besides the king, that they would get thrown into a den of lions. And so the king made this law or this rule. And no one was allowed to pray to anyone else. Only could worship the king. So the king thought, I made a great rule. I made a great law. I'm an important man and everybody needs to worship me. Now Daniel heard about this rule. Everyone in the land heard about the rule. But Daniel, he loved God and he wanted to only obey God. And so he knew that even though there was this rule or this law, that he had to obey only the one true God. And so the leaders, they were watching, and they saw Daniel. Daniel prayed to God. He would sit in the window and he would pray. 3 times a day he continued to pray to the one true God. Now, what was the rule? No one was allowed to do that. And the jealous leaders kept watching, and they caught Daniel and they said, Daniel is in trouble. We have to go tell the king. And so they rushed to go tell the king what Daniel had done, that Daniel had prayed to God instead of to the king. He had not obeyed the law, and the king felt sad. The king was sorry then that he had made the rule, because you know why? The king really liked Daniel. Daniel was a good guy, but the rule was the rule, and so Daniel had to be punished because he prayed to the one true God and he didn't bow down and worship the king. And so the punishment was whoever did that had to be thrown into the den of lions. Now the king told Daniel, Daniel, only your God can help you. You have to go in there, and only your God is going to be able to help you. So the king's soldiers threw Daniel into the den of lions, and a stone was rolled in the front of it so that Daniel couldn't escape. Now, how do you think Daniel felt? Do you think he was afraid? Would you have been afraid? The poor king, he stood there. He was so sad. He went home to sleep, but he couldn't sleep. All he could do was worry about Daniel. He got up early in the morning and he hurried over to the lion's den. He called out to Daniel and called his name, Daniel! And guess what? Daniel was still alive. Daniel told the king that God had sent an angel to shut the mouths of the lions so that they did not hurt him. And so Daniel, even though he got thrown into the den of lions, he was saved. God protected him and God saved him. Even though he didn't obey the king's rule, he still obeyed God, which was more important. And he was thrown into that lion's den, but God saved him. God protected him. The lions did not bite him. The lions did not eat him. And he was able to come out and he was okay because he trusted God and because he obeyed God. What lesson can we learn from that? Lots of lessons, as always, from our Bible stories. We always need to obey. Always need to do what is right and what God wants us to do. We always need to trust God. That means that we remember that He's going to help us. He'll help us make right choices. He'll help us obey at home. He'll help us remember to do what we need to do and to talk nice and to be kind, right? We trust Him to help us. So I want you to remember that today as you go out throughout your day. Remember to obey God, which means what? Also obey at home, and to trust God for whatever you need. And remember, you can always talk to Him and ask Him for whatever you need help with. Okay? Have a great day.